Hello everyone, my name is Davide, but you can call me Kashi. As you can hear from my accent, I'm not a native speaker, I'm Italian, so please forgive me for my pronunciation. So I'm here today to talk about my experience as assistant mangaka in Japan. First of all, let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm 27 years old and currently I'm doing two different jobs. So mainly I work as a translator, so I translate from Japanese to Italian. I mostly translate comics and novels for an Italian publishing house. And then in my free times, of course, I draw comics. So this is my latest comic. The latest comic I published, that's called Swamp Power. It's a story about a magical girl. And currently I'm drawing a webcomic called The Witch's House that you can read online for free. I'm going to put all the links in the description box down there. And well, I also have a Patreon page, so to allow my fans to support me, to allow me to create more pages, more art. That's all, but before we start, I start explaining my experience as assistant mangaka. Let's listen to the opening then. See you later. And here we are. The experience I'm going to talk about happened 3 years ago while I was in Japan. At the time I did a video, two videos actually, in Italian. I always wanted to do an English version because the Italian videos became pretty popular at the time. But I was so busy just living my life doing stuff, so I always waited to have free time. And moreover, I was a little bit shy about my accent, my pronunciation, so I waited a lot. But here I am. So, if you are Italian or you understand Italian, you prefer to hear the Italian version, I'm going to put the links in the description box because they're not in this channel, but they're in my Italian channel. Well, before we start, I want to tell you that, as I already said, I have a Patreon page. And in the next month I'm going to publish a couple of videos about my experience as assistant mangaka. And I also will explain how I met the first mangaka that allowed me to find the job as assistant mangaka, but only for my patrons. So please, if you're interested in finding it out, support me on Patreon and you will allow me to draw my comic and you will have more information about this experience. So I started working as assistant mangaka while I was in Japan for the last year of my master's degree. I studied Japanese language at university and I had the opportunity to spend my, not the whole year, just 9 months in Japan with a scholarship from the Japanese government. And I have to say I was very lucky because of two reasons. The first one is because I had the opportunity to work for two different mangakas. So first, for like 6 months I worked for a mangaka that was not very famous, as I will explain you later, and then in the last part, for like 2 weeks, I've been working for a very popular and famous mangaka in Japan. And two, I think I was very lucky because I actually am not such a good comic artist. And especially, I don't think I'm very good at the things the assistant should be good at, like perspective or anatomy. In fact, I am more a self-taught artist. I just took some summer courses that last like a couple of weeks when I was in high school, and that's all. I never had a teacher who seriously taught me perspective, anatomy, or how to color. Anyway, I always liked drawing comics since I was a little child, and I always wanted to become a mangaka since I found out what manga was in my middle grade school. So when I arrived to Japan, I knew I wanted to meet a mangaka. So I'm not going to explain here, as I already said, how I met the mangaka that allowed me to find this job. For now, let's just say that I knew a mangaka, okay, a pretty popular one, and it wasn't interested in working with me, but it was interested in connecting. So once he wrote me on Facebook because he was in the city of my university, that's called Tsukuba. He was in my city because he was organizing an event to raise money for Fukushima. I suppose you all know that there was a big mess, a nuclear disaster in Fukushima in 2011, if I'm not wrong. And so he was collecting money. So, since he was there and there were several mangakas participating at this event, he asked me to help him as a volunteer, to help the organizations. And so, since it was for a good cause and I really was interested in doing that, I went and I spent the whole day working with famous comic artists from all Japan, and it was incredible. I actually had just to take photos and to help people stay in lines and, I don't know, bringing food there, here and there, but it was a great experience. And the point is that while I was doing this, at a certain point, one of the mangakas, not a famous one, one that was an ex-assistant of the mangaka who called me there, and so this person approached me and asked me if I wanted to become his assistant, because the first mangaka had told him that I wanted to become an assistant, and so he was interested in seeing what I was able to do. And of course I accepted. I said I was very interested in trying, and that's how it started. So I want you to know that this wasn't a famous mangaka. The mangaka who invited me there, which was a famous one. But the other mangaka that previously was one of his assistants and now was an independent mangaka was not famous. He mostly drew like history comics to explain history to children, or pachinko comics. I suppose you all know what pachinkos are. They are sort of slot machines, so places full of slot machines. And he drew comics about pachinko, so like there were people playing pachinko all the time. And so I started going to his place every weekend. Actually, during the week I had lessons because I was there thanks to a university exchange, and so I had to be in my city, in Tsukuba, and that's like 40 minutes from Tokyo with the Tsukuba Express. But well, then I started going every weekend to his house. That was actually in the opposite part of Tokyo compared to the place I were, so it took me like an hour and a half and like $10 to go there. It wasn't actually very easy because I had to do all my homeworks, all my research papers, all my essays during the weeks while I had lessons, so that I could spend the weekend working in his office. That was also his house. But this was a great opportunity because I had the chance to see how a mangaka worked and to help him, and it was great. Like, well, let me tell you that the first time I arrived in the station of the area where he lived, he came to took me to the station because it was my first time, so I didn't know exactly where the house was. But before we went home, he offered me a coffee, so we entered in a Starbucks or something like that, and while we were drinking a coffee, he took photos of the table, and he didn't explain me why. But later, when we arrived in his house, and he asked me to draw, to reproduce the picture he just took, because he wanted to use it as a background. But first of all, let me tell you about his house. His house was also his office. It wasn't very big actually, but it was, I don't know, I found it amazing because it was full of mangas everywhere. There were a lot of papers with drawing hanging in the walls. There were models that you could move to make poses so you can copy them. I don't know, it was insane. It was, I don't know, I really liked it. Sorry, I don't really have the word to explain how amazing it was to be in an actually place where manga were created. There were two tables. In one of them there was a computer because he mostly drew with a computer, not because he liked it. Actually, he preferred to draw by hand. Since it was faster, we had to work with the computer because he wasn't famous, so he wasn't paid so much. But actually, he wanted me to draw everything by hand, manually, because he wanted me to learn. He thought that basics were very important, so he wanted me to draw with pencil, erasers, and inks, and like in the traditional way. So every time I left there, I had to draw something. Like I said before, sometimes it was a background and I had a reference, like a photograph. Sometimes he took like a screenshot. He opened like Google Earth and he found the place he wanted me to draw, and he asked me to reproduce it, like draw it. And sometimes I really didn't have any references. He just explained me the scenes and I had to draw a background or some people's or an object. And that was very tiring for me, because we worked from 9 to 7 p.m. Sometimes even later, like to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and we didn't have any break. We just had like a 30 minutes break for lunch, in which we went downstairs and we bought a bento, that's a lunchbox, and that's all. Like we ate like in 30 minutes and then we were working again. And the problem was also that the assignments were very difficult for me, and not always the things I had to draw were okay to be used in his comics. So sometimes at the end of the day he was going to use the backgrounds or whatever I did, and in other times he had to tell me that they weren't good enough, and so he insisted to pay me actually every time. But the times in which my work wasn't good enough, I asked him not to pay me because I didn't think it was fair. Well, sometimes, luckily most of the times, what I did was okay. So like he scanned it and he put it in his comic in the computer, and it was great. I remember the first time after a month I started working that he sent me a photos on Facebook where there was the printed page of my the comic with my background, and I have it in my bookshelf, the magazine, because I bought it then, and so for the first time I saw something I drew published in a magazine, in a Japanese magazine. That was a massive experience for me. I was so happy, I was so enthusiastic. So that's my experience. I kept working for him for like 6 months, and then I decided that maybe I need to do another video about it. I went to work for another mangaka, the first one, the one who invited me to the event for Fukushima, and that was a very different and even more exhausting experience. I think I need to do another video about it because it would become too long. And that's all. So please remember to read my webcomic, The Witch's House, and to support me on Patreon. If you read it, please leave me a comment here or Facebook or wherever to tell me what you think about it, and tell me what you think about this video, what you want me to tell you, if you have any other question. And remember that I'm going to publish on Patreon some more detailed videos. I'm going to publish some videos on YouTube too, of course, in which I'm going to explain more generic things, but like the more practical things about being an assistant mangaka in Japan, I will publish them only on my Patreon. So I really hope you liked the video, so please subscribe to my channel for more videos and support me on Patreon to allow me draw more comics and publish more videos. That's all, so bye!